tonight's guest, fellow New Yorker, New York City, actually, matrimonial attorney, Ian Steinberg. And he just popped on a couple of minutes ago to say hello. And now he's going to be coming on for real. Let me just see if he's here yet. Um, let's see. There he is. We're very close to each other geographically, but we haven't met in person yet. And Ian will repeat where his offices are in case those of you watching are New Yorkers as well. There he is. Two in a row. Oh, very good.
Hi.
Yeah. So Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you are, a little bit about your background, and then I'll ask my favorite question.
Sounds good to me. So my name's Ian Steinberg. I'm a matrimonial and family law attorney. I am currently sitting in my office in Midtown Manhattan. My firm also has offices.
Uh-oh. Okay, wait, your volume's off, Ian. Say something. I think it's, yep. Yeah, no, I think sometimes when you get a call, it mutes it. So, all right, Midtown Manhattan.
You know, we got this new fancy Zoom phone app, so it comes to my phone and my office phone. We're all plugged in, but that's what we do for our clients, right? We're always available. But no, I'm in Midtown Manhattan. Our firm also has offices up in Westchester and out on Long Island. I grew up in Westchester and went to law school here in New York City. So I immediately kind of returned home. I did go to Emory University in Atlanta, but the South was, if anyone's from the South, I'm sorry, I was a little slow for my New York taste. So I had to come back here. I actually began my legal career practicing in real estate. I found that didn't necessarily give me the personal connection that I was looking for. I was trying to help clients on a more personal level, and so I moved to the matrimonial and family law field. And for me, it was a great change because, like I said, I was able to really help people out, and I think that's something that I really like to do. I like to be able to work with individuals, communicate, and especially those who are going through a trying time, hopefully, get out onto the other side as
Yeah, and that's what we always say. One of our goals is to help people get through it themselves and their kids as unscathed as possible. So, favorite question, what makes you so good at your job?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'd like to think it's my interpersonal and communication skills. I think that's really important in our world when people are going through trying times. I think it's really good to be able to listen and to be able to communicate, and so that I can sort of help my clients with their to get to the goal that they need to get to, and to really figure out what are the priorities, right? Is it making sure that you stay in the home? Is it making sure that you plan for retirement? What are those types of things? And then being able to communicate that, whether that's to other lawyers, whether it's, either even to the other spouse, if it's in a mediation setting. So I think a lot of this is listening, communicating, and to me, that's a skill that I think that I have. And it's one that I really would like to, give to my clients, and when I'm able to give them my all,
right? And
both listening.
That's so important because we know that in general, attorneys are trained in logic. They're not trained in law school for those social, emotional skills that, especially for people in this community, are dealing with. That they need understanding, they need empathy. They don't want someone to just be like, all right, give me your financials and let's figure it out. Like, I'm not even paying attention. Like, they really appreciate that. So it's good to know. And I think, Ian, you had mentioned to me on one of our earlier calls that you have a little bit of a history that involves sports, which helped you develop these skills. Remember that?
I do remember that. So I'm a big hockey player. I play ice hockey actually up in I had a nice game last night, and um, uh, because of my hockey, I started to actually referee hockey games when I was 14 years old, and I did that for about 10 years. And I think when I turned 18, I started to be able to do the adult league game, the men's league games, and you're this 18-year-old year-old kid and you have 40, 45, 50-year-old guys screaming at you for why'd you call this penalty, and that was wrong and this and that. And I think that's a really heated type of situation. And to be able at my age, to learn these skills of, look, like I'm a person too. I might have missed that call. I'm doing my best. And I think working with, being able to kind of handle that in the moment, I think really helped me develop some interpersonal skills, and also just be able to kind of be comfortable in a more heated environment. And I think that's translated well to the legal field.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like it's not even a metaphor. It's literal. Yeah.
It is.
So,
Yes.
so I know we were going to talk about the things today that judges actually care about, and I told you, and I know that one of the top things people say is courts don't care. Like, I want the judge to listen to me. And so how would you, what do you have to say to that when you hear, I'm sure you hear clients say, I just want the judge to listen to me and hear my story and pay attention. I want the judge to care.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's a really common thing for us to hear. We hear that all the time. I want the judge to know what he did to me or what she did to me. And I think that what's important to remember is that the judge is dealing with 20, 30 cases a day, 5 days a week. That's 100, 150 cases, right? And they hear this, not the same thing, but they hear a lot of the same type of thing, whether it's there was cheating or there was, that, and that's the reason for the marriage or the downfall of the marriage, whatever the reason is. The judges hear those all the time because unfortunately that's a lot of the people who end up in court and who are getting divorced. And so in New York, it's what we call a no-fault state. And what that means is that the reason why you're getting divorced really just does not matter. And so if the judge is going to hear you say, well, he cheated on me, they're going to say, well, I don't know how that impacts whether or not you're supposed to divide up the bank account equally. That doesn't impact the statutory formulas for child support and for spousal support. But that's not to say that it doesn't matter in your case to you in your divorce. But it doesn't really matter to the court. Now, if it has to do with custody, sometimes it does make a difference, right? It does make a difference if there is someone else who's in the picture. But at the end of the day, with most of the aspects of a divorce, it really does not matter the reason why you are getting divorced. Again, no fault means no, it doesn't matter. And I know that that's hard for a lot of clients to hear. So what we talk about a lot is, well, what can we do with that information as your lawyer who's trying to help you get the best outcome? So whether or not it makes a big difference to the judge, it might make a big difference in our negotiations.
Okay, now you mentioned something called the cheating element. Is that kind of like what you were talking about with negotiations? And I also want to have you comment on when you said sometimes it may matter, because I know there's someone out there being like, ooh, when does it matter?
Well, I think, in terms of the negotiation element, it's something that we often call the guilt window. And what that is really, okay, while the court might not necessarily care, the other spouse may care, right? There might be an opportunity where they feel guilty for what they did. And so what we can do is try and leverage that. I mean, what you want to say is, okay, maybe they're in this position where because they feel guilty for what they did, maybe you can get something. Maybe it's you want to stay in the house and we can take advantage of this and we can say, you know what, let's go now and try and get you to stay in the house because they felt bad for what they were doing. Or maybe, there's some sort of additional spousal support or something like that we can kind of pull out in a negotiation because your spouse is feeling guilty about what they did. So while the court may not recognize it or not necessarily take it into account as the reason, because the reason for the divorce doesn't really matter, we can still utilize that as leverage when we're going through the process.
I mean, that's great. If the person does have guilt and remorse, and as you're saying that, I'm wondering if it's also a good idea to try to move towards a settlement more quickly, like earlier in the stages of before it gets to like months and years in court. because there's more of a chance to settle. People aren't as invested. And I see a question about Texas, but you're not Texas. You're only New York, right? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only New York.
Yeah, but I'm saying like early in the process, do you feel like people are more likely to get a better settlement versus like it goes on and on and on?
I mean, I would certainly say in the guilt window sort of scenario, the longer things go on, I think the more frustrated the other party may be, and therefore probably feeling less of the guilt, and the guilt turns a little to anger. Um, and when it's angry, I don't think it benefits it benefits anyone. I think, we try and counsel our clients to avoid court at all costs, right? It's expensive both financially and emotionally. And I think that that's something that if we can avoid it, we'd like to avoid it. And I think as that process drags on, you lose some of that. That guilt window maybe closes a bit. But I don't, yeah, it's just court is not, if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. But it's really our recommendation to try and figure out a way to settle it without the intervention of the court.
So speaking of that, are there signals in a case where you're just like, I think this isn't working. Like we're trying this, like this, we might have to litigate. Are there signs that you see over and over that it's like, oh, this is going to be one of those?
I mean, I think when tensions are high, you can feel it as the attorney, right? You can feel it from your own client, and depending on who the other attorney is, you can feel it from that end too. Are there certain telltale signs? I think sometimes the negotiation happens, and when the negotiation's going on, you can see if you're hitting a wall. I mean, I have a case now where they think that one side thinks that child support should be X and the other side thinks that it should be Y, and the delta is just too big. And I don't think, it might take, whether or not you're going to get to a trial, probably not, but it might take some pushing from the court to kind of help that along. And sometimes courts say, well, here's what I might do in this case. That's what the judge is going to tell you. Counsel, you should tell your client that if I were looking at this, maybe perhaps it would be closer to the other number than your number, and just kind of pushing you into that. And when there's child related issues, sometimes it's hard to settle because people are really passionate about fighting for their children. And sometimes it's just not going to work in terms of a negotiated settlement, which is unfortunate, because the best thing for the kids is not having their parents fighting, not getting dragged into court, not having, money that could be used for their future go to their divorce attorneys, right? I mean, it's the joke in our office all the time, and it's not really a joke. It's something that we say to our clients a lot. It's really, whose 529 account would you rather fund, your own kids or ours? And, we say it in jest, but it's truthful, right? I mean, the money is better spent going to your kids than spending it on fees. And I think that, that's, I guess, getting a little away from your initial question.
No, this is all really relevant.
Yeah, no, I think that's where we see it a lot, where, you can tell sometimes if you're trying to negotiate and the gap is just simply too far. And a lot of times people let the emotion get the better of them. And that's why I think it's important to speak with people like you, Lisa, who can help them kind of put that emotion into like compartmentalize a little, right? Because then if you're taking some of the emotion out of the decisions that are the legal decisions, typically then you're making better legal decisions, and you're listening to the advice of your attorney in a way in which you're a little more clear-headed, because you're able to have a space where you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember which brain chemicals they are, but often when people are in like fight, flight, or freeze, adrenaline, like you can't think clearly. So you can't make good decisions if you can't think clearly.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot because you get clouded by everything that's going on, and it's understandable. It's not an easy process. It's a significant life change. If there's kids involved, it's exacerbated. But if you're able to put those, and I'm not saying put them aside, right? I'm just saying, talk about them in a place that's safe and that's helpful, so that you feel heard, but it's separate from what you're doing in the divorce matter and, with your lawyer. And we talk about having a team all the time, whether it's someone who's helping you, divorce coaching, and it's a lawyer, and it's an accountant, and it is a financial advisor and a real estate broker, and all the different professionals that can help you out, because you're utilizing people with with different skills. And I think that's really
Yeah,
important to help
for
get through
sure.
the process.
So we got a question in today that I thought I'm just going to throw in because it was interesting and a little unusual, and I'm sure you can answer it. Somebody is at the very beginning of the divorce process, and her lawyer has asked her to write a narrative of the relationship. This relationship is almost 20 years old, and she's like, I don't even know where to start. So I was going to say, have you heard of this before? And if so, what should be focused on, and how could this possibly be used by the lawyer for the case?
So I think the idea is most likely to try and get some background, right? Like, to your point, there's 20 years worth of history, and you have an attorney come in who's saying, okay, I see this on paper, maybe what's going on. I see the financials, I see that type of stuff, but I don't really know the background. And sometimes that's helpful to get to the bottom of the background a little bit in order to figure out exactly, who the players are, right? And in terms of what would be important, I mean, if there's children, I would start with the relationship with the children, how old they are, kind of who's been the caretaker, what the schooling is like, what their daily routines may be, and who handles it. Is it, mom takes the kids to school in the morning and then goes to work, or does dad take the kids in the morning and then mom picks them up in the afternoon? Kind of, what is the daily routine as it relates to the kids? I would then say employment history. What was it like before the marriage? What was it like at the beginning of the marriage? What is it like now? In terms of hours worked, jobs, money, because a lot of times that changes throughout the course of a marriage. Someone who might, if dad maybe was working before, but then he decided to stay home and take care of the kids while mom worked. Well, what was he earning before, and kind of what is his capacity to go back, their degrees, things like that. And then probably as much in terms of the financial history. I think even who pays the bills, what bills, which party actually handles that, what assets they own and things like that, I think is sort of helpful in the entire narrative. But, to put 20 years of real life relationship into just a small kind of summary is understandably challenging. It's a hard thing to do.
Well, thanks for clarifying, because I was thinking, I don't think the lawyer wants a novel about people's feelings and all of that, like how they've been wronged and the cheating and all the other stuff. And so you are saying it's basically like a narrative, but still focusing on things that a lawyer can use for the case.
Yeah, I think giving that important background, because then it's like, okay, if I know that you were out of the workforce for a long time, then I know that the spousal support is going to be an important issue, right? Because you need that time to get back on your feet. Or is the job that you had before something where you can jump back in, or was it something where it's going to take a while to kind of build yourself back up? And I think that, yeah, it's a narrative, not of, on Thursday, July 15th, 2007, he yelled at me, or, she didn't make dinner, or he didn't, do the laundry. I don't think that is necessarily as helpful, but I think those kind of thinking about the main points, the finances, the custody, the asset distribution, and kind of the background of those things is probably what I'd imagine.
When you were talking about things with who pays the bills, part of me thought maybe a little bit about the power dynamic in the relationship, if we're going to get into that area at all.
Yeah, I think that's always helpful. I mean, look, we have some times where we're getting close to settlement, and we know that the other side is never going to accept what we propose, right? They're just, the party is just the type of person who needs to make the last offer and have their offer accepted, right? So I think that type of stuff is important, to your point, in the power dynamic, because You want to know that, right? So do we go in our proposal a little bit higher, knowing that they'll counter, and then we can accept the counter, right? Because now that person will be fulfilled, being like, oh, he or she accepted my offer. Does it really matter in the end? No, but that's the way that the case is gonna. It's the only way it's gonna get settled if that person's offer is accepted. So I think, yeah, information about the power dynamic, the different roles in the relationship, I think is also
Yeah, and what you just said about how one person or one party will need to have their offer accepted, and how you understand that, because that's what our clients are often dealing with. The other side needs to feel like they're winning. And so you have to know the psychology behind that, other than always approaching it from just a rational perspective. Well, this is fair, they should take it. Well, they're never going to take it. If we're suggesting it, they're never going to take it. So we got to figure out another way to do it. So again, there's where those softer skills come in.
Yeah, and I think that's where, again, this isn't your to my history, this isn't a typical real estate deal, right? And that's more of a business deal type of thing. There's emotions there, and they're understandable emotions. And I think that they come into play when you're trying to accept agreements. I have a client who probably doesn't want to accept a child support amount because it starts with a 5 instead of starting with a 4. So would he psychologically be interested in accepting something that was 49.50 instead of something that's 5,000, right? Or will the other same thing for the other side? So we know that for whatever reason, this is really important to them. I had a client, they own a business together, him and his wife, and she was really interested in having more than 50% of the business because for whatever reason, she felt that she started it just before they met, and so it was hers more than his. So what we ended up doing is getting her to agree to a higher valuation on the business, right? So that my client's 40% was effectively the same as him getting 50%, right? It was still making up a number, still $1 million that he was getting bought out at. But to her, it felt like she was getting 60%, but she was just getting, right? So it didn't really make a difference, but it's this emotional and, to your point, psychological thing of she needed to have more than she needed to have more than 50% of the
Yeah.
business, and that was important. So it's a
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking it's actually not one side that maybe needs to feel like they win, but everybody wants to feel like they won something, if there's a way to do it.
Right, and the classic statement about a good settlement is that both sides sort of happy, but neither's completely happy, right? Everyone is because in order to come to a settlement, everyone's going to have to compromise a little bit, because if they got whatever they wanted, the other side's probably not going to agree to it, right? And so there is give and take, and so that's why you can kind of see if you are going to come to an agreement, you're going to save yourself from being in the inside of a courtroom. You're going to have to give at some point. But how do we get, sometimes it's, well, maybe it feels like a gift, right? Maybe we put something else in the proposal knowing that we're going to take it, right? Okay, put this in, but we know they probably won't accept it. But then we'll feel okay, when they say, okay, fine, we'll take that out, but give us this. So it's a little bit of strategy too, but it's important, going back to the power dynamic, to know how that works, because whether or not someone is going to want to say fine, or that they refuse to give in on
Yeah.
X or Y or Z.
So okay, so you touched a little bit on the couple that owns a business together. A lot of our clients have that issue too, but we talked about marital assets. And I like to use the quote, like, what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too. And often one party is like, everything is mine because it's in my name. How does that affect things in terms of title when someone's like, well, this is mine though, because my name's on it?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception, or one of the biggest misconceptions, is that in New York, absent a prenuptial agreement, title title doesn't control. So the way that marital property is calculated is everything that's earned from the day of the marriage until the day a divorce action started, regardless of whose name it's in. And there are a few exceptions. If you get a gift just to you, an inheritance or a personal injury award, those are carve outs from that. But generally, when you earn income, even if it during the marriage, even if it goes into a bank account in your own name, if it was earned during the marriage, it's both of yours. And so I think that there's a big misconception with, oh, no, 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 but it was in a bank account in my name. Oh, well, okay, but when did you earn it? Oh, I earned it during our marriage. Well, then it doesn't matter that it was your spouse is getting half of that, or
Oh boy. Okay. Um, all right. Well, that's good to know. And it's making me think, I probably could have investigated things a little more thoroughly with my own, but it doesn't matter at this point. All right. We talked a little bit about negotiation and some of the psychology that's involved. Is there anything that you might want to add to a list of things that you see that can be used as leverage? So like the guilt window and cheating, and figuring out how, if someone has to win, but is there anything else, or do you think it really just depends on the situation?
I mean, the typical lawyer answer is yes, it depends. But I think that other things that, I think it's really important to think about what the other person might want and what you want, right? Like, what's your most important thing? If your goal is to stay in the marital home, then, we can kind of figure out of saying, all right, or how do we get that for you, right? Or if you know that the other person really wants to stay in the marital home, okay, well, now how do we leverage that, right? Let's say your spouse, no matter what, wants to stay there. All right, well, there's a retirement account, there is a bank account. If you don't want me to just ask that the court sell the home, well, maybe give me a little bit more of this. Or because I'm going to have to rent a new apartment or buy a new apartment, I need more of the cash assets than the retirement assets. But I think kind of it's why having this team is helpful, because you got to be able to project out what's the most important thing for you, right? If you want to keep the home no matter what, but you realize that you may not be able to do so because of your income level, or that all your money would be in retirement accounts and it'd be hard to access without taking a big hit on taxes or things like that, right? You then, maybe that's the place where you give, right? You give on the home so that someone else, so that there's something else you can take out of that, whether it's more support, whether it's more a different type of asset. I think we have to look at things in a complete package as opposed to everything individually. This is not a la carte, right? It all ties into each other. And I think that a lot of times, if you know something that you're willing to give, or something you really want, that's helpful in terms of figuring out what the overall strategy will be, because again, they're all intertwined: your spousal support, your child support, whether you're paying or receiving, and the distribution of assets. That's all. It's
Yeah, I'm
all
really glad that you
intertwined.
mentioned the line about things not being a la carte, because often our clients, when they're dealing with someone, the other pushes, like, well, give me this and give me this and give me, like, little bits, and they sort of chip away at something. And it feels like our people given and given and given because they just want it to be over, instead of saying, like, this is going to be a package deal, and you shouldn't just give up things. You should, if you're giving up something, you need to get something else. Like, it's okay to compromise on certain things, but what do you do when you see someone who's like, I just want this done, forget it, I'll take anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation, because a lot of times people are kind of deciding whether or not, like, what it's worth to remain in the process and to keep the fight going. And so a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, look, to exactly your point, if you're giving up on this, on X, you really should get something on Y. But at the end of the day, if you want to give in because you just don't want to fight anymore, be aware of what you're doing, right? Understand that you're saying you're
Mhm.
putting a value on getting out, right? I mean, see it sometimes with clients who will say, their spouse wants another 10 grand in spousal support a month, and we're like, are you what? Like, that if you were to go to court, the court would never give you that, would never require you to pay that much more. And they'll say to us, you know what, I just want to get out of this. And I said, okay, well, that the spousal support's for 5 years and it's 10 grand a month. That's 120 times five. You're looking at, I don't know, $600,000. Is that worth it to get out of this? Right. And some people, if they have the means to do so, they're like, yes, it is. I
Mhm.
just want to be done. And at least they've made a decision using all of the information, right? They know what they're giving up, and they know they're kind of what we say buying their freedom a little bit, right? But other people, will say, "Oh wow, I didn't really." When you put it like that, oh my God, that's a lot of money. Um, but a lot of times we'll have clients who are arguing over, $300 a month in child support. And I'm not poo-pooing that by any stretch of the imagination, but all I'm saying is let's figure out the lawyer hours that it's going to take to fight over this, and let's figure out what $300 a month over the course of, until your kids turn 21, which in New York is when you have to pay child support until. Um, let's figure out what those numbers are, right? If you have 5 years left and it's $300 a month, and we start to do the math, and we're all of a sudden like, okay, it's 10 grand, and you want to make a motion and go to court and argue about it, you're probably going to end up paying more than 10 grand. So I understand at a certain point it's a cost benefit analysis, and sometimes people just want to win, and so they're going to keep going and they're going to keep fighting, but at least they know, look, this may not be the best financial decision. And we try really hard to counsel people out of fighting for the sake of fighting. But at least if they're doing so fully aware of what they're doing. They have all of the information in front of them. And I think that's the most important thing for us, is really saying, like, they say in court, counselor, right? We're counseling people. We're giving them advice. We're laying it out. And we're saying, here, it's ultimately your decision to make. Here's our advice. But if you're going to make another decision, at least you're doing it with everything out on the
so
table.
important. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. So people are in these, highly emotional state, and now we have social media. And so it's always a controversial thing. I know the answers that I get from basically every attorney, but what's your opinion on people posting about their divorce or custody battle while they're still in the middle of it on social media?
So I tell every one of my clients that every text message, every social media post, every email, before you send it, imagine that the judge is reading it, right? Imagine that is going to be slapped onto a motion that is filed with the court, and the judge is going to read whatever you're writing. And if you're okay with the judge reading it, then maybe you can send it. But if you're not, then I wouldn't send that. And so I think in general, stay off social media when you're going through the process. I think nothing really good can come about it. If you really I don't really see clients taking to social media saying, my spouse that I'm divorcing is the best person.
Not anyone here listening or
really,
watching ever.
right. Exactly right. So what benefit is really coming from that? If you're posting, you're probably doing something negative, right? And I just think that it can cause issues. And by the way, myself as a lawyer, when I'm sending an email to the other attorney, I also assume attached to the back of a motion. So I am very careful about what I say in writing, because I think you want to be professional and make sure that you're acting above board, but also that I think, is the judge going to read this, and what's the judge going to think? Is the judge going to think that I am being irrational, or that I am being inappropriate, or whatever it might be? And if that's the case, whoa, I certainly should not be sending that email, both from a professional level, and also because it's not going to help my client get the outcome that they need. And so I think, especially in this world where things get highly emotional, as the attorney, we need to take a step back too, and realize that we have to make sure that we're being professional, because yelling, screaming, fighting doesn't help our client's interests.
Costs us a lot of money. We've talked about kissing contests and attorneys that really get into it. And you had said in an earlier conversation that it is important for attorneys to have clear heads as well, to not get really emotionally invested in that way where it's like, I need to win this because I need to win too.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're all trying to fight at our hardest for our clients. We want the best outcome that we could possibly get for our client. But having an argument with another attorney, all that causes is more fighting, more anger, and probably, to your point, more legal fees. And how is that the best interest of our client? It's not. And so a lot of times for us too, we kind of need to take a step back. I mean, a lot of the benefit of our firm is we have 20 lawyers. And a lot of times what we do is we call them sanity checks, right? So I will speak to another attorney and say, hey, can I just vent to you for a second? And can you tell me if I'm crazy? Right. And I say, look, here's what the other attorney is doing. He or she is saying this, that. Here's kind of my position. What do you think? And sometimes like, no, Ian, like, why are you taking that position? And I'll be like, okay, maybe you're right. And it's that kind of extra second, right? And a lot of times for me, it's more than a second. It's 24 hours, right? I was taught by my dad as a youngster, you should always kind of use the 24-hour rule. And if you think that you're going to say something that you might regret, take a deep breath and look at it the next day, right? Or write the email, save it as a draft, and look at it again the next day with a clearer head. And you're probably going to say,
Yeah,
maybe I shouldn't
actually,
have said that.
we call
And
that. So I used to be a high school English teacher. So for our clients, we call it being put on the permission slip plan. So we say you're not allowed to send anything to the other side, and you have to send it to us first, and then you have to wait for us to say okay. And we probably won't say okay right away. So you have to wait. So it prevents them from spewing everything first thought in their brain that would end up harming them, because again, judges are going to read it. It could be used against them, and the emotions don't help.
Yeah, I think that's such an incredible idea that you have there, because I've seen a lot of emails that have typically been forwarded me from the other attorney saying, look what your client said. And I'm like,
I know. I know. And it's not a
no,
gender thing. Men
talking about.
and women are so like everybody gets crazy when they're writing to their exes in our community.
Yeah, I mean, look, emotional. There's a reason why you're getting divorced from this person. Or why you're no longer, if it's a family court issue, why you're no longer, living in a relationship with this person. But it doesn't help you to send those types of emails, and they might feel really great in the moment, but I'm sure if you read it the next day, you're gonna be like, oh, why did I send that? And there's a lot of times where I have to tell my clients, like, hey, we discussed this. This doesn't move it forward, right? Just a lot of times the response can be, why don't we just have the lawyers talk about it? Or don't respond. Wait.
Yeah.
Think about it.
It
Send them
is
to
so
you.
hard for people to restrain
And
themselves. I mean, even me, when I get something, sometimes I want it, like I feel my body, like I have a response, but then I have to stop myself, or I'll just write it and it doesn't go anywhere. But it's hard because we get, especially in the middle of things like this, we're so reactive.
yeah, and for the attorneys too. I mean, things get heated. You're in the middle of an intense litigation, and someone sends you an email, and you want to be like, "What the heck are you saying? You're so wrong. This isn't what the case law says. That's not what the judge said. That's not what my client said." And it's like, okay, hold on, deep breath. Let's start this over again. And I will admit, I have written emails that I have deleted entirely and said, sent something else and been like, whew, good thing I didn't send that one. That wasn't gonna work out well. And I like, my ego can't get in the way, right? It's about my client. It's not about me. It's not about me showing that I'm smarter or that I'm better or that I know the case law better or whatever the case might be, because I don't know how that ultimately is going to help my
Yeah. So
client. In fact, it's probably going to.
speaking of that, we hear all the time, and I have definitely experienced it, like the level of civility in family court. Why are lawyers like bullying people? I'm not saying you're doing, but geez, it is so out of control. It's this adversarial system in America.
Yeah, no, it's certainly it. If you just look at the case caption, it's John Smith versus Jane Doe, right? It's verse. A lot of times when we're starting things, we don't, if it's trying to be more negotiated, we don't use verse. We use with, right? So we'll say,
Mm-hmm.
John Smith with Jane Doe, and so that sort of shows, okay, we're not trying to be as adversarial. We're trying to say, look, we're working with each other. And I know it's a little bit, and it might be semantics, but to me, it sets the tone a little bit better. If you're trying to work it out in that fashion, I think once you get into court, I I think virtual court has had a negative impact in that regard. People are much easier, are much more likely to say things behind a screen that they wouldn't dare say in person.
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense with social media, but I didn't realize that with Zoom court.
I mean, you'd be surprised where some people are taking their court calls from, right? You're in a bathroom, you're in a car, you're in your bed, you have things behind you that maybe shouldn't be behind you. It's everyone probably saw the video of the guy who was the cat. He said, "I'm not a cat, Your Honor," right? I mean, it was so funny, but I mean, I couldn't imagine being in front of a judge with a cat filter on. I mean, and there's a lot of interesting things about virtual court, and I think sometimes it's better because clients are saving money by me just being in my office on my computer as opposed to having to go down to the courthouse and actually do it. But I think it makes settlement sometimes harder because you don't have that you don't have the nervousness that comes across for some clients being in the courtroom. I think it really makes things real. I think the attorneys and the parties are together, and they're able, when you're in the courthouse and you're able to sort of have those conversations, whether it's shuttle diplomacy or it's just being there together saying, okay, let's figure this out, we're all here. Or honestly, the judge saying, well, if it's 12:30, if you don't figure this out by 1 when the court closes by lunch, you're coming back at 2:30, and now your attorney who's been there since 9 a.m. is going to have to come back at 2:30, and you're going to have to stay all day. And if they're, I don't want to say you're pressured into it, but there's a little bit more, a lot of negotiations go on in the hallways of the courtroom, more so than they do in the courtroom themselves. And I think with virtual court, you sign off, and that's it, right? And now you're out in a month, and who knows what's going to happen. So it's one of the
interesting. I mean, I personally liked in-person court better than Zoom because Zoom, there was a distance. It just felt like it wasn't totally real, and I felt like it was more dismissive. Like it was more rushed. Like let's move on to the next thing. I just felt like it wasn't the same. All the body language, reading the judge's, you could see their face, but you can't see the whole thing.
And there's something to be said when you walk in and there's a court officer there. There's a judge in a robe who's sitting above you. And at least here in Manhattan, I mean, the New York court is, the New York County Court at 60 Center Street is like what they use on Law and Order, right? It's like a real courthouse. It's gorgeous, but it's a courthouse. And I think there's something about that people don't say things that they would say when they're, on their phone or on their computer screen. When you're in an actual courthouse and there's an officer and a judge who you're staring face to face with. And I think that's been lost a little bit in the virtual world. So it's coming back. We've been in court in person a fair amount, which to me, I think usually is better. I mean, there are some things that don't necessarily you need to be there for if it's a status conference or something that could be quick. I like that can save fees for clients. But to get the real meat and potatoes done, I think
makes sense. All right, so let's check the time. Oh my gosh, you have your call soon, and we've been on for almost an hour. Yeah. Thanks, Ian. So you want to tell people, I know you only do New York, how can people find you?
So you can find me on my LinkedIn. It's Ian Steinberg. You can also go to our website, which is www.berkbot.com. And you can also give us a call. It's 212-867-9123.
All right. Thank you so much, Ian. This is really enlightening and very, very helpful. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Talk to you later.
I really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.